With the Dynasty Warriors Origins DLC now released, and confirmation of an Origins sequel, or should I say sequels, being all but officially given, we can probably assume that the next one is already in the early stages of production. At this point in time we have very little information, but based on previous developer comments about Origins and some basic logical thinking, we can have a bit of fun and make some predictions about what we might get in the next game. So with the usual intro out of the way, let's dive in. Prediction number 1 is that the sequel will end around Fan Castle. Up until fairly recently, my assumption was that any sequel would end at Wuzang Plains, as that's the traditional endpoint for Dynasty Warriors, as the Jin period wasn't introduced until Dynasty Warriors 7. However, in an interview just before the release of the DLC, the Origins director confirmed that he also thought Origins would be a two-parter ending at Wuzang, but during the first game's development, he realised it would actually take 3 games to reach Wuzang Plains. From a development perspective, this does make sense, as covering events in the same level of detail as Origins from Chirby to Wuzang Plains is a lot of ground to cover, so it's probably not realistic to expect it all in one game. The interview didn't mention where the second game could end, so why am I predicting around Fan Castle? Well, it's a battle with all 3 factions present, and with Guan Yu's death it offers an obvious dramatic narrative climax to end on. It's also possible that Fan Castle would be the last battle for Wei, while Xu and Wu could end at Yailing, which would also be a great climax to end on, with Liu Bei seeing red and seeking revenge for his sworn brother. So that's why I specifically said it could end around Fan Castle. Moving on, prediction number 2 is one that some of you will not want to hear, but sadly I think it's better to temper our hopes in advance. So prediction number 2 is that the big playable roster won't return in the sequel. Looking at it logically, I think it's more likely that the Origins sequel will continue to portray the events and stories from the perspective of a single main character, while introducing us to the actual Dynasty Warriors just like it did in Origins. I do think there's some room for compromise here, however. For example, the number of playable companions could be increased, or they could let us play as the companions for entire stages in battle replays or in a free mode, even if it's basically just a visual reskin of the player's MC using the same stats and skills. While obviously not the same as having a big traditional roster, I do think this could help reduce the sting a little. And trust me, I'd love to be wrong with this prediction, but as I said, it's probably best to temper our expectations in advance. You might have noticed that in that section I didn't mention Ziloan and simply said the main character, and that's because prediction number 3 is that in the Origins sequel, we won't play as Ziloan. My assumption is that Ziloan may well appear in the game as a unique NPC, and maybe we could even unlock him as a companion, but I think his time as the player's MC is over. If he does show up, I can see the player having to fight him at some point, possibly as a test to see if we're worthy of carrying on in his stead. It's possible that he might not even be there at all, and he simply walked off into the sunset after the events of the first game, but I do think it's more likely that he shows up in some form. I just hope they don't turn him into the Bailuan of the sequel, a character who has grown tired of the world and opposes us no matter which path the player follows. I don't mind the idea of him challenging us, but much prefer the idea of him challenging us in a benevolent way, to see if we're capable of finishing what he started. So if we're not playing as Ziloan, then who will the main character be? Well, I think the MC will be whoever we want, because prediction number 4 is that they will add a character creator. We know from interviews about the development of Origins that they did consider a character creator for the MC before dropping it in favour of Ziloan. So with the sequel, I think this time they will take the character creation route, instead of having a fixed MC again. On a personal note, I think ultimately they made a mistake going with Ziloan in the first Origins, as while I don't think there was anything wrong with him and the Guardians of Peace storyline in general, they weren't exactly interesting either. To me, they were simply forgettable. And with how popular character creators are in other games, I think it's a no-brainer for them to implement a strong character creation system in the sequel, and it might also help ease frustrations about there probably not being a large playable roster. Prediction number 5 is that they will push the tactical side of the gameplay a bit further. Origins did a great job of bringing back some of the tactical Battlefield elements that had been lost in 7, 8 and 9. And based on the director's comments, this does seem like something he would want to push even more in the future. How they will do that, however, well, they have plenty of options. They could lean on the older games and bring back some of the lost battle sim elements, such as named lieutenants fighting under other officers, or they could introduce new tactical elements that they haven't done before. I have a whole wish list video focused on this topic, and while I absolutely do not expect them to bring back all the lost battle sim elements of the older games, I'm fairly confident that the sequel will see this tactical aspect of the gameplay added to in some form. And the final prediction is looking even further ahead, as if this does end up being a 3-part series ending in Wuzhang Plains. Then my prediction number 6 is that after the 3rd game, they will release an Origins Empires. I think this makes sense from a development perspective, as they'll be able to take all the assets that they've already made from the 3 Origins games, such as the stages and the complete roster, and combine them onto the traditional Empires world map. And with the 3D overworld introduced in Origins and the strategic battles added in the DLC, I think we've already had a sneak peek at the gameplay changes that could be more fleshed out in an Empires release. For example, forces could be moved around the map like in Total War, instead of just using the 2D menu system like in the older games. I know there's fans out there who really wanted Empires after the first Origins, but with it only covering up to Chirby, the stage selection is somewhat limited, so it's missing multiple iconic battlefields, and of course it's missing a big chunk of the roster, so getting a good Empires out of that would be somewhat difficult. After the sequels, however, they won't have that problem, as they'll be able to combine the stages and roster from the series to create a robust Empires title, and I think that would be the perfect way to tie up the Origins era of Dynasty Warriors. That might sound like a long wait.
I'm so bored.
And I guess they could decide that they have enough content to make an Empires release after the first sequel if it ends at Fan Castle, but I don't think it would feel right to have an Empires without iconic stages like the Nanman campaign and Wuzhang Plains, so I do think it's a little more likely that they will wait until after the 3rd game before doing it. So that's my 6 predictions for the Origin sequels, but just as I said at the start, we currently have very little in the form of official information to go on, so do take everything I just said with a big pinch of salt. My predictions are simply assumptions based on previous interviews about Origins and my own thoughts, but ultimately, I don't know any more than you watching this video right now. So what do you think? Do you think these predictions could be on the right track, or do you think they'll do something different? Either way, in time it'll be fun to look back at this and see how close or far I was from what we actually end up getting in the future of Origins. So that's it for now, but we've still got the Dynasty Warriors 3 remaster to look forward to this year, so hopefully it lives up to the original and you all feel the power of its magic and have a great time reliving those PS2 era memories. Thanks for watching.
Stand your ground. Reinforcements will be here soon.